이러한 흐름은 방송에까지 이어져 다양한 시사 교양 프로그램을 통해 사회에 나아갈 방향을 시청자들에게 전달하고 있으며 지난 대통령 선거 기간 동안 뉴스 및 시사 토크 프로그램을 통해 이슈를 발빠르게 분석하며 종편 4개사 및 케이블 채널 전체 시청률 1위를 달성했습니다. 조선미디어는 최고의 콘텐츠를 오디언스에게 제공합니다.
아이들에 관련된 것도 다른 신문에는 없는 조선일보만 있는 그런 부분들을 굉장히
관람객 여러분, 잠시 안내 말씀드립니다. 대한민국 재태크박람회 세미나가 잠시 후 11시부터 시작될 예정입니다. 행사장 안으로 입장하셔서 자리에 착석 부탁드립니다. 관람객 여러분, 잠시 안내 말씀드립니다. 대한민국 재테크박람회 세미나가 잠시 후 11시부터 시작될 예정이오니 행사장 안으로 입장하셔서 자리에 착석 부탁드립니다. 네.
다른 신문에는 없는 조선일보만 있는
전통 그리고 사실 꾸준함.
공익에 관한 거에 상당히 많은 관심을 가지고
아주 재미있게 그 기사를 엮어가고 있어요.
사회 나침반 같은 신문 아닌가 이 생각합니다.
1000만 오디언스의 시대를 이끌어갈 프리미엄 종합미디어 그룹 조선미디어. 구독의 구독률, 열독률 1위는 물론 광고주가 가장 신뢰하는 신문 1위, 9년 연속 대한민국 500대 기업 CEO들이 애독하는 종합일간지 1위로 남다른 품격을 자랑합니다. 여기에 압도적인 페이지 뷰의 신문 사이트와 새롭게 약진하고 있는 방송 채널까지 조선미디어는 다양한 플랫폼에서 영향력을 가진 종합미디어로 동반 성장하고 있습니다. 종이신문의 미래를 걱정하는 시대. 그러나 조선일보는 다릅니다.
읽을 거리가 좀 많은 것 같아요. 분석적인 그런 기사들도 많이 나고 또 팩트 같은 거 전달하는 그런 능력 같은 거라도 이런 걸 봤을 때는 큰 만족도를 주고 있어서
최고의 지필진의 펜 끝에서 나온 세상을 바라보는 날카로운 시선, 명확한 논주가 돋보이는 사설과 칼럼, 고품격 경제 뉴스 위클리 비즈, 항상 특별한 뉴스를 선사하는 Y 등 조선일보의 내실 있는 콘텐츠는 국내에서 유일하게 열독률이 상승하는 신문이라는 타이틀과 함께 그 영향력을 유지해가고 있습니다. 그 결과 현재까지도 180만 부의 발행 부수와 국내 유일 100만 부를 넘는 유가 부수를 기록하고 있는 조선일보. 이와 함께 독보적인 조선일보의 DNA를 이어받아 탄생한 TV조선은 기존 뉴스, 보도 프로그램의 패러다임을 바꿔가며 6개월째 종편 뉴스 시청률 1위를 기록하고 있는 뉴스쇼 판을 위시해 시청자의 꾸준한 선택을 받고 있습니다.
판의 매력은 공중파랑 다르게 포맷을 잡아서 저희들한테 시원하고 또 화끈한 그 의사를 표현하는 걸로 느끼기 때문에
조선미디어 그룹이 만들면 영향력이 남다릅니다.
특히 최근에 그 학교 폭력이나 주폭해서 이런 그 기획 연재물이 있었는데
조선일보는 그동안 사회적 문제가 되었던 주폭 문제부터 진정한 결혼의 의미를 다시 생각하게 만든 작은 결혼식 시리즈, 사각지대였던 아파트 관리비 비리 시리즈까지 다양한 분야에 걸친 심층적인 기획 취재로 우리 사회가 가진 문제점을 개선하고 세상을 움직이는 데 앞장서고 있습니다.
조선일보가 나서서 이번에 캠페인을 하니까 그 사회적 파급력이 굉장히 커진 것 같아요. 언론으로서의 그 공익적 사명을 다하는 데 가장 중요한 거 아닌가 이렇게 생각해요.
이러한 흐름은 방송에까지 이어져 다양한 시사 교양 프로그램을 통해 사회에 나아갈 방향을 시청자들에게 전달하고 있으며 지난 대통령 선거 기간 동안 뉴스 및 시사 토크 프로그램을 통해 이슈를 발빠르게 분석하며 종편 4개사 및 케이블 채널 전체 시청률 1위를 달성했습니다. 조선미디어는 최고의 콘텐츠를 오디언스에게 제공합니다.
아이들에 관련된 것도 다른 신문에는 없는 조선일보만 있는 그런 부분들을 굉장히 이렇게 엄마들이 좋아하고
헤드라인부터 문화, 경제, 교육, 레저를 아우르는 섹션까지 폭넓고 깊이 있는 정보의 스펙트럼이 돋보이는 조선일보.
공개합니다.
닥터 콘서트, 대찬 인생, 만물상 등 건강 생활 정보는 물론 삶의 진솔한 이야기를 시청자 눈높이에 맞춘 고품격 프로그램으로 만들어 최고의 지식과 감동을 제공하고 있는 TV조선. 수준 높은 경제 전문 뉴스의 실시간 제공, 다양한 규모의 국제 컨퍼런스와 전시회를 개최하고 있는 조선경제 아이. 조선미디어의 콘텐츠는 1000만 오디언스의 삶을 풍요롭게 하는 자양분이 될 것입니다. 신뢰받는 언론, 최강의 맨파워, 사회를 변화시키는 미디어, 삶을 풍요롭게 만드는 다양한 콘텐츠. 이를 바탕으로 1000만 오디언스와 함께 대한민국의 미래를 만들어갈 1세대 언론 브랜드. 종이 신문을 넘어 방송과 인터넷 미디어를 아우르는 프리미엄 종합 미디어 그룹. 바로 조선 미디어입니다.
다른 신문에는 없는 조선일보만 있는
전통 그리고 사실 꾸준함.
공익에 관한 거에 상당히 많은 관심을 가지고
아주 재미있게 그 기사를 엮어가고 있어요.
사회 나침반 같은 신문 아닌가 이 생각합니다.
1000만 오디언스의 시대를 이끌어갈 프리미엄 종합 미디어 그룹 조선 미디어. 구동의 구독률, 열독률 1위는 물론 광고주가 가장 신뢰하는 신문 1위, 9년 연속 대한민국 500대 기업 CEO들이 애독하는 종합일간지 1위로 남다른 품격을 자랑합니다. 여기에 압도적인 페이지 뷰의 신문 사이트와 새롭게 약진하고 있는 방송 채널까지 조선 미디어는 다양한 플랫폼에서 영향력을 가진 종합 미디어로 동반 성장하고 있습니다. 종이 신문의 미래를 걱정하는 시대. 그러나 조선일보는 다릅니다.
읽을 거리가 좀 많은 것 같아요. 분석적인 그런 기사들도 많이 나고 또 팩트 같은 거 전달하는 뭐 그런 능력 같은 거라도 이런 걸 봤을 때는 큰 뭐 만족도를 주고 있어서
최고의 지필진의 펜 끝에서 나온 세상을 바라보는 날카로운 시선, 명확한 논주가 돋보이는 사설과 칼럼, 고품격 경제 뉴스 위클리 비즈, 항상 특별한 뉴스를 선사하는 Y 등 조선일보의 내실 있는 콘텐츠는 국내에서 유일하게 열독률이 상승하는 신문이라는 타이틀과 함께 그 영향력을 유지해가고 있습니다. 그 결과 현재까지도 180만 부의 발행 부수와 국내 유일 100만 부를 넘는 유가 부수를 기록하고 있는 조선일보. 이와 함께 독보적인 조선일보의 DNA를 이어받아 탄생한 TV조선은 기존 뉴스, 보도 프로그램의 패러다임을 바꿔가며 6개월째 종편 뉴스 시청률 1위를 기록하고 있는 뉴스쇼 판을 위시해 시청자의 꾸준한 선택을 받고 있습니다.
판의 매력은 공중파랑 다르게 포맷을 잡아서 저희들한테 시원하고 또 화끈한 그 의사를 표현하는 걸로 느끼기 때문에
조선 미디어 그룹이 만들면 영향력이 남다릅니다.
특히 최근에 그 학교 폭력이나 뭐 주폭해서 이런 그 기획 연재물이 있었는데
조선일보는 그동안 사회적 문제가 되었던 주폭 문제부터 진정한 결혼의 의미를 다시 생각하게 만든 작은 결혼식 시리즈, 사각지대였던 아파트 관리비 비리 시리즈까지 다양한 분야에 걸친 심층적인 기획 취재로 우리 사회가 가진 문제점을 개선하고 세상을 움직이는 데 앞장서고 있습니다.
조선일보가 나서서 이번에 캠페인을 하니까 그게 사회적 파급력이 굉장히 커진 것 같아요. 언론으로서의 그 공익적 사명을 다하는데 가장 중요한 거 아닌가 이렇게 생각해요.
이러한 흐름은 방송에까지 이어져 다양한 시사 교양 프로그램을 통해 사회에 나아갈 방향을 시청자들에게 전달하고 있으며 지난 대통령 선거 기간 동안 뉴스 및 시사 토크 프로그램을 통해 이슈를 발빠르게 분석하며 종편 4개사 및 케이블 채널 전체 시청률 1위를 달성했습니다. 조선 미디어는 최고의 콘텐츠를 오디언스에게 제공합니다.
아이들에 관련된 것도 다른 신문에는 없는 조선일보만 있는 그런 부분들을 굉장히 이렇게 엄마들이 좋아하고
헤드라인부터 문화, 콘서트, 교육, 레저를 아우르는 섹션까지 폭넓고 깊이 있는 정보의 스펙트럼이 돋보이는 조선일보.
공개합니다.
닥터 콘서트, 대찬 인생, 만물상 등 건강 생활 정보는 물론 삶의 진솔한 이야기를 시청자 눈높이에 맞춘 고품격 프로그램으로 만들어 최고의 지식과 감동을 제공하고 있는 TV조선. 수준 높은 경제 전문 뉴스의 실시간 제공.
관람객 여러분, 잠시 안내 말씀드립니다. 대한민국 재테크 박람회 세미나가 잠시 후 11시부터 시작될 예정이오니 행사장 안으로 입장하셔서 자리에 착석 부탁드립니다. 세미나의 원활한 진행을 위해 소지하고 계신 휴대폰은 진동 또는 무음으로 변경해 주시기 바랍니다. 대한민국 재테크 박람회 세미나의 기조 연설은 영어로 진행될 예정이며 한국어와 영어 동시 통역이 제공됩니다. 통역 수신기는 재테크 박람회 세미나장 주 출입구에서 대여가 가능하고요. 사용 후 반드시 자리에 놓고 퇴장해 주시기 바랍니다. 통역 채널은 한국어는 채널 1번, 영어는 채널 2번입니다. 강의 중 강의 내용에 관한 질문이 있으시다면 세미나장에 있는 진행 요원에게 펜과 메모지를 전달받아서 질문을 작성하신 뒤 다시 진행 요원에게 전달해 주시면 되겠습니다.
시선, 명확한 논주가 보이는 사설과 칼럼, 고품격 경제 뉴스 위클리 비즈, 항상 특별한 뉴스를 선사하는 Y 등 조선일보의 내실 있는 콘텐츠는 국내에서 유일하게 열독률이 상승하는 신문이라는 타이틀과 함께 그 영향력을 유지해가고 있습니다. 그 결과 현재까지도 180만 부의 발행 부수와 국내 유일 100만 부를 넘는 유가 부수를 기록하고 있는 조선일보. 이와 함께 독보적인 조선일보의 DNA를 이어받아 탄생한 TV조선은 기존 뉴스, 보도 프로그램의 패러다임을 바꿔가며 6개월째 종편 뉴스 시청률 1위를 기록하고 있는 뉴스쇼 판을 위시해 시청자의 꾸준한 선택을 받고 있습니다.
판의 매력은 공중파랑 다르게 포맷을 잡아서 저희들한테 시원하고 또 화끈한 그 의사를 표현하는 걸로 느끼기 때문에
조선미디어 그룹이 만들면 영향력이 남다릅니다.
특히 최근에 그 학교 폭력이나 뭐 주폭해서 이런 그 기획 연재물이 있었는데
조선일보는 그동안 사회적 문제가 되었던 주폭 문제부터 진정한 결혼의 의미를 다시 생각하게 만든 작은 결혼식 시리즈, 사각지대였던 아파트 관리비 비리 시리즈까지 다양한 분야에 걸친 심층적인 기획 취재로 우리 사회가 가진 문제점을 개선하고 세상을 움직이는 데 앞장서고 있습니다.
조선일보가 나서서 이번에 캠페인을 하니까 그 사회적 파급력이 굉장히 커진 것 같아요. 언론으로서의 그 공익적 사명을 다하는데 가장 중요한 거 아닌가 이렇게 생각해요.
이러한 흐름은 방송에까지 이어져 다양한 시사 교양 프로그램을 통해 사회에 나아갈 방향을 시청자들에게 전달하고 있으며 지난 대통령 선거 기간 동안 뉴스 및
여기까지 전체하면 되죠? 지금부터 2013 대한민국 재테크 박람회 세미나를 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 안녕하세요. 저는 오늘 사회를 맡은 TV조선 임지혜입니다. 네, 조선일보는 다가오는 2014년 새해를 앞두고 오늘과 내일 이틀 동안 행복한 중산층 만들기 프로젝트라는 이름으로 대한민국 최고의 재테크 고수들의 강연을 준비했습니다. 해외 투자 전문가들의 기조 강연을 시작으로 국내 투자 고수들의 강연과 토크 배틀을 통해서 많은 정보를 얻어가시길 바랍니다. 특히 오늘 강연 프로그램은 저금리 시대 재테크의 길이 있다라는 주제로 기조 연설과 토크 배틀, 라이브 특강, 실전 특강이 이루어질 예정입니다. 그럼 기조 강연으로 본격적인 세미나를 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 기조 강연에는 한국어, 영어, 동시 통역이 제공됩니다. 한국어는 채널 1번, 영어는 채널 2번입니다. 기조 강연에서는 투자의 귀재라 불리며 월가의 전설적인 투자자로 알려진 세계적인 투자 전문가 짐 로저스 홀딩스 회장님을 모시고 2014년 세계 경제와 투자 금맥을 주제로 새해 글로벌 재테크 기상도에 대해 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 그럼 짐 로저스 회장님을 큰 박수로 단상으로 모시도록 하겠습니다.
Thank you very, very much for coming. Some of you know that I am really very keen on Korea. It's a country that I have always had a good time in. I always like coming to Korea, so I am very pleased to be here again. I am especially excited to be here at this time. As some of you know, I expect there to be a merger in the next few years of North and South Korea. And at that point, a combined, a united Korea is going to be one of the most exciting countries in the whole world. The Japanese do not want Korea to unite because a united Korea will be a country of 75 million people right on the Chinese border. You will have extremely cheap and hardworking and disciplined labor in the north with lots of natural resources and massive amounts of capital and management ability here in the south. So a united Korea is going to be one of the most exciting countries in the 21st century. So I am especially glad to be here now so that I can assess more and more how exciting Korea will be. In my view, China will certainly be the most important country in the 21st century, but Korea is going to have another period of greatness in your history. So you're at the right place at the right time, and I'm extremely pleased to be here. But having said that, the purpose, of course, is, thank you. Yeah, you are, to repeat, you are at the right place at the right time. And as I look around the world, I see China, which will be a great country, but I don't see many others. Many other countries in the West are in decline. Some countries in Asia are on the rise, but Korea has the best prospects of any country that I can see in Asia or in the world. So, but to start, I did recently go around the world, as many of you know. My then fiance, she's now my wife, Paige Parker, and I spent 3 years driving around the world. We drove through 245,000 kilometers, 116 countries, and as you can see, we got into the Guinness Book of World Records because I'm the first hedge fund manager to drive around the world. So in my case, it was pretty easy to get into the Guinness Book. We started in Iceland. We drove through Europe, Turkey, China, Korea, Japan, back into Siberia, Mongolia, across Russia, all around Europe, 32 countries in Africa, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, down to the bottom of South America, Central America, up to Alaska, and then back down to the southern part of the U.S. and back to New York. That was 3 years on the road. 245,000 kilometers, can you hear me? 116 countries. So when we got home, as you can imagine, we were a bit tired. we thought we better stop and rest for a while. So we did rest for a while. One result is we now have a baby girl. I had never had a child before. I thought that children were a terrible waste of time, energy, money. I was never going to have a child, no matter what. I felt sorry for people who had children. I thought that all of you who had children were very foolish and didn't know what you were doing. But I was completely wrong. I was totally wrong about children. This little girl is so much fun for me. I cannot get enough of her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If there's anybody in the room who has not had a child yet, I urge you to get home and get on with it, because children are so much fun. Everybody should have a child. Take a day off if you have to. Well, maybe you shouldn't take a day off these days, but, you know, go home for lunch. Go home for lunch and have a child. And by the way, everything I tell you all today, I'm doing with my own life, my own investments, my own money. So any advice I give you, I'm doing it myself. I'm not just standing up here talking. So when I say to go home and have a child, we went home, we had another one. We now have two, because these children are so much fun for me. What I want to do now is I'm going to show you a short video. I'm going to show you 2 minutes of shots from the road of what it's like to drive around the world, because I hope that all of you are going to make so much money at this exposition or wherever that you too are going to get in your car or your motorcycle or whatever and take off around the world. There was a survey done recently that showed that the #1 dream, which people have in the world, I mean, it's not everybody's #1 dream, but the dream which comes out on top in the surveys is to chuck it all, get in the car, and go around the world. And go around the world. So it will start with us in Iceland, toasting each other, wondering if we will make it alive. Off to the Great Wall. We did get married on the trip. Here we are cutting our cake. This is our honeymoon. We went through 15 war zones. These guys were not very friendly at first, but if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you will see a familiar face. One of many markets we visited. This is one of many bad roads. This was a sad time. We went to an AIDS orphanage down in South Africa. This is King Tut. Whenever we could, we stopped at schools because I'm very keen on education. Everybody always wanted to have their pictures made. Myanmar, which used to be called Burma. This is the Iguazu Falls down in South America. This is the bane of my existence: bureaucracy, red tape, regulations. This is the black market. It's a much better class of people. And when we got back to the U.S., we kept going. We headed up to Alaska in the dead of winter. And when we got back to New York, our first stop was the World Trade Center. That had blown up while we were gone. So let's go around the world again, only this time let's talk about some of the things that I am doing, some of the things I have learned in my years of driving around the world. I spent 2 years on a motorcycle going around the world, and then later I spent 3 years in a car driving around the world. So let me tell you some of the things I have learned. The first thing that we have to understand about the world, and I mentioned it before, is the rise of China. China is going to be the most important country in the 21st century, whether we like it or not. And there are a lot of people in the West who do not like that. The 19th century was the century of the UK. The 20th century was the century of the US. The 21st century is going to be the century of China. Now, I know they call themselves communists in China, but they are among the best capitalists in the world right now. I know people who would tell you that they are the best capitalist in the world. You know, China is the only country I know which has had recurring periods of greatness. Great Britain was great once, Rome was great once, Egypt was great once. China has been great 3 or 4 times. Now, China's had 3 or 4 periods of great catastrophe as well, but every time they somehow rise again. In 1978, Deng Xiaoping said we have to try something new. The system is not working, and so we unleashed entrepreneurship and capitalism again. As you all know, China has been booming for the past 30 years. It is not a flash in the pan. It is something that is going to continue to change the world as we know it. Look at Korea alone. 20 years ago, you had very little to do with China, and now China is your largest trading partner, or certainly one of your largest trading partners. And that's all happened in just the last 2 decades. But there are many more changes to come, including, as I said before, a unification of North and South Korea, which also will have enormous effects on the rest of the world. So when I speak about China, I always explain that it's got a great future, but I do try to remind people that no matter how good a job China does, there will be problems along the way. Every country, every family, every individual, every company which rises has problems somewhere along the way. Nothing is straight up. So there will be problems in China. I don't know what or when or why, but there will be problems. But when you see those problems, try to take advantage of the opportunity. Don't despair and give up. When I speak to people all over the world, I tell them that the best advice of any kind that I can give them is to teach their children and grandchildren Mandarin Chinese. My little girls, both of my little girls speak fluent Mandarin. They speak Mandarin like, if you heard my girls speaking and could not see them, you would think that they were Chinese. If you see them, you see they have blue eyes, so you know they're not Chinese. But they both speak perfect Mandarin because I am convinced that knowing Mandarin and knowing Asia is going to be the best thing that I can do to prepare them for the 21st century. Several years ago, we sold our house in New York. We moved to Asia so that I could prepare my girls for the 21st century. So again, I'm not just standing up here babbling, I'm living this as well. Now, speaking of China, some of you may want to invest in China. I do have investments in China. I usually buy Chinese shares when they collapse. The last time they collapsed was 2008. In October and November, and that was the last time I bought Chinese shares in any big way. But last month in November, they had a major meeting in China. They have named it as one of the 3 most important meetings in China in the last 35 years. In 1978, they had a meeting and Deng Xiaoping changed China. 1993, they had another major meeting in Beijing, changed the world again. They say that the meeting in November was equally as important as the 2 before that. So I would urge all of you, if you don't know about the government proclamations that came out of China last month, and they're still coming out, to show how China is going to change its own country, I urge you to learn about it, because even if the Chinese stock market goes down, some areas of the Chinese economy are going to do extremely well now. because the Chinese government has decided to promote some parts of the Chinese economy. For instance, they decided that they are going to open up the financial community after many years of neglect. I am not optimistic about finance in most parts of the world. I am optimistic about finance in China. So I have been buying Chinese financial stocks recently. The Chinese government also decided that, you know, over the past 30 years, the people in the cities have done extremely well, but the people in the countryside have not benefited from the major changes in China. So now they're going to give incentives, they're going to help agriculture and the people in agriculture, the farmers. I have started participating in this movement to help agriculture, to help farmers in China. They also decided that they're going to build the railroad system even more. They point out that China is the same geographic size as the United States, but the United States has 250% more kilometers of railroad than China does. So they're going to spend a lot of money on railroads. They're going to spend a lot of money building up defense. They're going to spend a lot of money on health care. There's a huge need for health care in China, and the government knows that. So they're now going to open the healthcare market more and more to the free market. If you are a doctor, or if you know anything about healthcare, or if you want an area to invest in, Chinese healthcare will probably be extremely exciting for the next 10, 20, 30 years. So if you follow what the government in China is doing, you will probably find a lot of wonderful opportunities. The Chinese also said, coming out of this plenum, that in the future, when there's a situation, they will let the market decide what is the best solution to any problems. I, for one, find that extremely exciting because, as you know, especially in the West, more and more countries are saying the government can decide better than anybody else. Well, I know that governments cannot decide better than everybody else. The market has always been better than any government bureaucrat. China itself has now said that when they don't quite know what to do, they will let the market decide. I find that astonishing, especially for a country which calls itself communist. So you can see that there's some very exciting changes coming out of China. We will have more problems in China going forward. We will have more problems in the Chinese stock market. They're going to let interest rates rise. That is going to hurt some people. That is going to hurt property developers in China. I would not invest in real estate in China because I know there are more problems coming. But I mentioned several areas of the Chinese economy where I am starting to invest. You might think about some of those areas of the Chinese economy as well. While we're speaking of other parts of the world, I have to talk to you about the United States a little bit. The United States is now the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, and the debts are going higher and higher and higher. At the moment, the world is having a wonderful time in many stock markets because we have a huge amount of money printing going on. The United States, Japan, Europe, England, all of these countries have decided that they're going to print huge amounts of money to debase their currency. The Japanese said, we will print unlimited amounts of money. That's the word they used. Then America said, well, we can print huge amounts, and the Europeans said, we will do whatever is necessary, and the English. So this is the first time in recorded history that all countries at the same time are spending huge amounts of time and money printing. It's never happened in recorded history before, but now the world is floating on an artificial ocean of liquidity. There's a huge ocean of liquidity out there, and the people who are getting that money are having a lot of fun. Japanese stockbrokers are having a lot of fun right now. But I warn you, be very careful. As long as it goes on, we're all going to be happy, or the people who get the money are going to be happy, but you must be aware this will come to an end someday. I'm not sure when it will come to an end, because at the moment, no politician wants it to end. In my view, what will happen is some of the central banks will start to cut back a little bit, the markets will get scared, the central bankers will get scared. Remember, people at central banks are just bureaucrats and academics. They don't really know too much about the world. So when the markets start going down again, they will panic and start printing more money. So I don't really see much to stop it until eventually the market says, we're not going to take this garbage anymore. We know this is fake. We know this is a sham. We know this is artificial. Now, this could go on another couple of years, because at the moment, I don't see any real bubbles anywhere in the world, except maybe in government debt, but there are not many bubbles in stock markets. So I see that this could go on for a while more, with setbacks along the way. Now, if you're looking, well, I'm always looking for new investments. I mentioned to you about what's going on in China. I mentioned to you that I'm extremely optimistic about the future of Korea when you merge with the North. As I look around the world, I'm always looking for other places to invest. One of the places that I have started investing recently is Russia. I first went to Russia in 1966 and came away very pessimistic about Russia. I was pessimistic about Russia until 2012. So you can see, I was pessimistic about Russia for 46 years. But now Russia is a very unpopular stock market. Nobody wants to invest in Russia. I think the only stock market which is less attractive to people is Argentina. So I always like to find places where people do not like to invest if I see positive changes taking place. Positive changes are taking place in Russia, so I have started investing in Russia. Mr. Putin, who basically was a KGB thug, is changing his stripes. He understands that he has to develop a proper economy, so I have started investing in Russia for the first time in 46 years. Russia also has huge foreign currency reserves. Russia also has a free market in its currency. Most countries, India, China, Brazil, these countries all have exchange controls, but Russia has a freely convertible currency. So I have started again investing in Russia for the first time. I mentioned to you some investments in China that I am starting to make. I know there are going to be possibilities in Korea going forward. Now, as you may have noticed, the three countries I mentioned so far, well, four, I've mentioned four, the United States, which is now in decline, but the other countries are in Asia. We're in the middle of a huge historic shift. In the 1920s and 1930s, the center of the world moved from the United Kingdom to the US, exacerbated by a financial crisis and mistakes made by politicians. We have another huge shift taking place in the world, only this time it's from the United States to Asia. The largest creditor nations in the world now are China, Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore. The assets are in Asia. The ambition, the drive, the energy is now in Asia. The United States is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, and the debts are going higher and higher every day. So you're living at the right place at the right time. And as I said before, I expect Korea to be one of the most exciting countries in the world after you merge with North Korea going forward. Now, having said that about the United States and its currency by definition, the United States is the largest debtor in world history, and the US dollar is in the process of losing its status as the world's reserve currency. Now, having said that, that's the big picture. At the moment, I happen to own US dollars. I own US dollars not because I have confidence in the future of the US dollar. In fact, I'm pessimistic. But as I said to you before, there's going to be more currency turmoil in the world when this artificial sea of liquidity starts to dry up. Now, whether that's 2014, 2015, I don't know. But when it comes, many people will flee to the US dollar. They will put money into the US dollar mainly because they don't know what else to do. They will see it as a safe haven. I want to tell you the US and the US dollar are not safe havens, but many people will think they are when the next turmoil comes, and there will be turmoil when this sea of liquidity dries up. So many people will flee to the US dollar. I hope that if it happens the way I have outlined to you, then I am smart enough on that rally in the US dollar to sell the last of my US dollars and put my money elsewhere. I don't know where I will put it. It depends on what happens in the world in that time. Maybe the renminbi, but who knows? Another country where I have been investing recently is Japan. I am not investing in the Japanese currency. One of the reasons we're going to have turmoil in the future, in the currency markets especially, is because of what Japan is doing. Mr. Abe has said he will print unlimited amounts of money. That's terrible for Japan. 20 years from now, we're going to look back and the world is going to say that was when Japan really started going into serious decline. But in the meantime, the people who are benefiting from this huge amount of money printing in Japan are going to make money. I own Japanese shares. I bought more Japanese shares recently. For instance, I bought some some stockbrokers in Japan because I know they're going to make a lot of money. I bought some of the big international companies in Japan because I know they're going to benefit from all of this money printing. It is not good for Japan, I repeat. It is not good for the world in the long run. But temporarily, some people in Japan are going to do well. So I have started buying Japanese shares as well. Now, Japan and Russia and some of the other places I have mentioned, I have really not done much in those countries for a long time, if ever. But now I'm looking for opportunities. China, I have not invested for nearly 5 years. So I'm starting to look for opportunities again. One of the things that I have found in the investment world, in my experience, is you probably are not going to be successful investing where everybody else is investing. You're going to find success if you invest in things where nobody else is investing. The Japanese stock market has been going down for 22 years. The Russian situation has been a disaster since 1917. So I have found that it's usually better to invest where other people are not and where things are depressed, but only if you see something positive starting to change. Another area of the world economy on which I'm extremely optimistic is agriculture. I mentioned Chinese agriculture before, but as I look around the world and the world economy, one of the most exciting areas that I can see is agriculture, farming. Very few people are interested in farming. Farming has been a disaster for 30 years all over the world. Farming has been so bad that in the last 10 years, even though we have produced a lot, the world has consumed more than we have produced, which means agricultural inventories are near historic lows. But worse than that, because farming has been so bad for 30 years, the world is running out of farmers. The average age of farmers in America is 58 years old. The average age of farmers in Japan is 66. I'm told that the average age of farmers in Korea is extremely old. In Canada, farmers are the oldest in recorded history. In Australia, the average age of farmers is 58. In the UK, the highest rate of suicide in any economic sector has been in farming, because farming has been a terrible business. Now you might say, well, if it's a terrible business, why are you interested? That's why I'm interested, because it's going to change. You know, more people in America study public relations than study agriculture. The old farmers are dying and retiring. There are no young ones coming. So the price of agriculture has to get much, much better, or we're not going to have any food at any price. So I am extremely optimistic. I am pessimistic about finance in most parts of the world. In my view, most of the world's stockbrokers are going to be driving taxis in a few years as finance becomes less and less important. The smart ones will learn how to drive tractors so that they can go to work for the farmers, because the farmers are going to be extremely successful in the next 10 or 20 years. It's the farmers who are going to be driving the Lamborghinis. The stockbrokers are going to be driving taxis or driving tractors for the farmers. Now, there are many ways to invest in agriculture. You can become a farmer. In fact, one of the most exciting parts of the world economy I know right now is the land up near the DMC. You know, the land near the DMC is extremely cheap because nobody wants to invest up there. When the war comes, the North Korean army is going to come through the DMZ, so nobody wants to own land there. I'm telling you there's not going to be a war. I'm telling you the DMZ is going to be removed in the next few years, and that land is going to become extremely valuable. So you can invest in farmland, including farmland in the northern part of South Korea. You can become a farmer. You can invest in stocks, seed companies, agricultural companies, tractor companies. You can buy agricultural products. I own a lot of agricultural products right now myself: wheat, corn, cotton, sugar. I'm optimistic about sugar. In fact, if you can go out later and if they're serving coffee, get yourself some sugar. I got mine. I'm very optimistic about sugar going forward. So there are many areas of the world economy where one can invest. I've mentioned quite a lot of them here in the last few minutes. So what I think I should do now, since I have spoken for a while, I think I should stop and take questions. I will take questions from you. I will take questions from you about anything you want to discuss. We can talk about honeymoon spots if you want. I've been to a lot of nice places, a lot of bad places. We can talk about the best beer in the world. We can talk about how to make money, how to lose money. Goodness knows I've certainly lost plenty of money in my life. So let's open it up to you. And as I say, you can ask me questions about anything you want. I think we have microphones. Do we have microphones? Anyway, let's open it up to questions about anything you want to discuss. Thank you. You have a microphone? They need microphones. Is a gentleman here? I see. You have. Do you have microphones? Do you have microphones?
No.
Well, I want to take questions, but I don't know quite how we're going to do it. I cannot hear you.
Yeah.
And I need a translator.
No. 네, 준비될 때까지 잠시만 기다려 주시기 바랍니다.
Well, while we're waiting, and I have to apologize. I didn't know it would be. I thought it would be better organized. Some of you have already been asking. Some of you have already been asking me about gold, and I will go ahead and answer the question about gold before we start the questions. I own gold. I expect gold. I have not sold any gold. I have hedged some of my gold positions, but I'm not buying gold. At the moment, I expect there to be another chance to buy gold later, whether it's this year, next year, or the year after, I don't know. The reason my thoughts about gold are, as I say, I own gold and I've owned it for many years. The situation with gold is gold has gone up 12 years in a row, and that's extremely unusual in the investment markets for something to go up 12 years without a down year. So the rise in gold was an anomaly. So in my view, the correction in gold will also be an anomaly. It's been going on for 2 years now, but it has further to go in my view. I expect another chance to buy gold. Another reason that I am worried about gold is because India, which has been for many decades the largest buyer of gold in the world, Indian politicians are blaming their problems on gold because Indians buy so much gold. So Indian politicians have been doing a lot to cut back the purchase of gold. They put on taxes, regulations, controls, tariffs, doing everything they can to cut back on the purchase of gold. That is one reason that gold has been going down for a while. But more worrisome, to me anyway, is that Indian politicians are now trying to find a way to make Indians sell their gold, and especially Indian temples. As some of you know, over the past few hundred years, the temples in India have accumulated massive amounts of gold. Nobody even knows how much. So the politicians are now trying to figure out a way to make the Indian temples sell their gold. If that happens, I assure you, I don't know if it will, but if it happens, I assure you the price of gold will go down a lot more. I hope that at some point in the next year or two, I hope that I'm smart enough to buy more gold, because over the decade, the price of gold will go much, much, much higher. But in the meantime, I am not buying gold. I have hedged some of my gold because I see things going on in the gold market which worry me and mean that I am not buying more gold. So if we're ready now, we can take questions.
할까요?
If you have the microphone, just speak. Okay, ask the 3 questions. You have the 3 questions.
I have. 네, 강의 중 청중분들께서 저에게 질문을 주셨는데요. 제가 좀 질문을 소개해 드리도록 하겠습니다. 차례대로. 자, 첫 번째 질문입니다. 양적 완화 축소 이후 개인 투자자들은 투자 방법을 어떻게 바꿔야 하는지 질문하셨습니다.
Well, I don't think that investors should change their way of investing at all, ever. Let me explain. You should not invest in anything unless you yourself know a lot about it. I know everybody wants a hot tip, but let me tell you that is not the way to become a successful investor. The only way to become a successful investor is to find the things that you yourself know a lot about. Everybody in this room knows a lot about something, whether it's sports or fashion or cars or something. When you find something happening in your field that you already know a lot about, and you will know more about it than I will, you will know more about it than any stockbroker because it's already your passion. When you see something happening in your field, that's where you invest, and that's how you make a lot of money. You don't worry about the TV, the television, the car, the newspapers, the internet, people speaking. You wait until you know a lot about something. Now, the question specifically was about how you should change because the end of tapering. I've already explained, I don't think tapering is going to end in any serious way for a while. Somewhere along the line, markets are going to go down as the tapering gets more serious. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for that. But then you're going to find the central banks are going to start printing more money. So the markets are going to go back up for a while. This is artificial. It's going to end very badly when it ends. You must understand that. You must be prepared for that. So you should be worried. You should be careful, and you should be prepared. But don't change your way of investing except to invest only in what you know. Now, if the decline comes, which I expect, then you would be prepared to buy more of the things that you know a lot about. Having said that, I do want to emphasize, because it's very important, the next time the world has economic problems, they're going to be very, very serious. In the United States, we have had economic slowdowns every 4 to 6 years since the beginning of the Republic, over 200 years ago. And every time they get worse, we had a problem in 2002, things got better. 2008, we had another big decline. It was worse in 2008 because the debt was so much higher. The next time we have a problem in America, whether it's 2014, 2015, it's going to be much worse because the debt has gone through the roof. The Federal Reserve alone, the central bank alone in America, the debt has gone up by over 500% in just the last few years. So be very, very careful. I want to repeat again and again, when this artificial ocean of liquidity ends, we're all going to suffer very badly. So be sure that whatever you are investing in, you yourself know a lot about it. But in the meantime, we're all having fun. But the next time the problems come, it's going to be serious. So don't invest in anything unless you yourself know a lot about it.
네, 두 번째 질문을 드리겠습니다. 양적 완화 축소 이후 달러와 가치와 원화 가치는 어떻게 변화될 것으로 전망하는지 질문하셨습니다.
The US dollar, I've explained, I own the US dollar at the moment, not because I expect good things to be happening in America. The debt is getting higher and higher, but only because many people will flee to the US dollar. Now, in Korea, you've done a brilliant job. I've already said earlier that, the center of the world is moving from the West to Asia. I've also explained to you I expect Korea to be one of the most exciting countries in the world after you merge with the North. So, yes, the Korean won is one of the better currencies to own, certainly has been and is at the moment. But when the currency turmoil comes again, I think many people will flee currencies they don't understand, and you will see people going to the US dollar. That is the reason that I own more US dollars at the moment than I have in a long time, not because I'm confident in the US dollar, but only because I see problems coming in many currencies in the world. So while you have done a brilliant job and your currency eventually is going to be very, very exciting, I'm not so confident about it right now.
네, 질문 한 가지 더 드리겠습니다. 양적 완화 축소로 인해 해외에 투자할 때 가장 피해야 하는 국가와 가장 유망한 국가가 어떤지 말씀해 주시기 바랍니다.
Well, I mentioned many countries in which I'm investing. The QE tapering I've explained is going to hurt everybody. Eventually, when the market says to the central banks, we don't want to do this anymore, we don't want to take all of this garbage money that you're printing. I've mentioned some countries where I have started investing. Russia, China, Japan. These are countries where I have started investing after the next crisis, and we will have a crisis. I hope everybody in this room understands the world is going to have another economic crisis, whether it's 2015, 16, 14, I don't know. And the next one's going to be worse than the last one. Obviously, I don't know which countries will come out the other side better, I would think, because of what I've said to you about Russia, Korea, China, maybe even Japan. If it hits low enough, there will be opportunities in some of those countries. The best place to be will be in the countries which are creditor nations. I've explained the large creditor nations in the world now are China, Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan. These are countries where there are massive assets. The West is going deeper and deeper into debt. You might also think about some of the natural resource-based economies, because when things hit bottom again, people will be there will be huge shortages of natural resources, agriculture, for instance. So if the agriculture sector will be extremely exciting with the next time the world hits bottom. So more than sectors, those are some of the countries that I suggest and some of the sectors. And I want to repeat to you that Korea is going to be one of those very, very exciting countries coming out the other side, especially as you get closer and closer to merging with North Korea, which I know no one in this room expects to happen except me, but I want to repeat to you, you're going to merge with North Korea in the not too distant future. It's going to be peaceful, and it's going to be great for Korea and great for the world.
네, 이번에는 마지막 질문은 직접 하신다고 합니다. 네, 질문해 주세요.
Hey, welcome to Korea. And I have a question about what you think about the price of oil and what you think the price
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you for some reason. You're speaking English, I can tell that, but I don't know what you're saying.
Okay. I have a question about the price of oil and what you think is going to happen. Do you think oil will still be traded in US dollars? And about like the demand for oil in the future and the unrest in the Middle East, and what do you think the future of the price of oil is going to look like?
Okay, that's an extremely good question. The answer will take a book, but I will give you an answer. First of all, the surprise, in my view, with the price of oil in the future will be how high it stays and how high it goes. Now, in the next crisis, the price of oil and everything else is going to collapse. But I would expect it to be one of the first things that rises again. And the reason is because known reserves of oil throughout the world are in steady decline. Every major oil field that we have discovered, and there has been no major oil field since the 1960s, but they're all in decline now. So reserves everywhere are under stress. In the US, we have started developing and producing a lot of oil in the last 3 or 4 years from shale oil, and that's one reason that prices have not gone up, despite the fact that reserves elsewhere are declining. And it's great for the moment. The problem with those wells is the reserves decline very quickly. Production for shale oil wells drops by anywhere from 40 to 60% after 1 year. At the moment, everybody's running out and drilling a lot of wells because it's so exciting. But the further we get into it, the more we realize this is not as much fun as we thought it was going to be because the well production drops dramatically. And people are finding that in other parts of the world, it's not quite so simple. In Poland, for instance, which has huge amounts of shale, people like Shell Oil, Exxon Oil, and others have abandoned shale oil because they realize it is not profitable to be drilling shale. China has a huge amount of shale, but they're not nearly as developed. Maybe they will be, but they're not so developed now because the geology is not the same. And shale oil takes huge amounts of water. The Chinese already have big water problems. Other people have water problems too. So while we're having what I expect to be a temporary rise in production in the U.S., therefore pressure on prices, I don't know how much longer it would last. My answer to you is prices are going to stay somewhat stable until the crisis comes. When the crisis comes, everything is going to go down, and I urge you to buy a lot of oil at that time. If you don't want to become a farmer, buy yourself some oil.
네, 청중 쪽에서 질문 한 가지 꼭 하고 싶다고 하십니다. 질문해 주세요.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rogers. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay. My question was, what do you think? How do you think India will fare in this next?
What is your name?
Jessica.
Jessica.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you. Jessica? That's
Yeah.
not a Korean name.
No, I've been studying abroad for a long time.
What's your Korean name?
Juyang.
Julia.
Yeah.
Julia, India is a wonderful, exciting country. If you can only visit one country in your life, I would urge you to go to India. There is no country in the world that has a breadth and depth of culture like India. You cannot believe the man-made and natural sights. The Indian women are always winning beauty contests. They've got these unbelievably smart and handsome men. It is just an amazing, if you walk down the street in India, it is a constant sensory feast. You cannot believe the religions, the food, the languages, everything. It's just a very, very exciting place to visit. Having said that, Julia, I would not invest in India. India has the world's worst bureaucracy. I have traveled around the world twice. I've seen a lot of horrible bureaucracies. India's the worst. The government interferes with everything. It's very hard to make a lot of money in India unless you're involved with the politicians. Many people go to India and try to do business, including Indians, and come away in horror because of the bureaucracy and the corruption that exists. More important than that, Julia, the Indian debt to GDP is now 90%. There are studies which show that when a country has so much debt that its debt goes above 90%, it's very difficult for those countries to grow in a rapid and dynamic manner. And it's understandable. You have all this debt, and a lot of what you do goes to pay off the previous debt. That's one reason the United States has been in decline for the past several years, at least in relative decline, because we've got this staggering debt, which is constantly causing problems to the United States. So India is a fantastic place to visit, but I don't want to invest there. Huge debts at every level, terrible balance of payments problems, terrible inflation problems, and they're not solving those problems. So far, they're making them worse. I explained to you what they're doing in the gold market before. Indian politicians are going to find other ways to make things bad. But if you can only visit one country, you should get on a plane and go to India. It's a very exciting place.
네, 마지막으로 한번 청중분들 중에서 손을 들어서 표시해 주시면 예, 한 분 더 받아볼까요? 네, 가운데 계신 분입니다. 예, 마이크가 갈 시간까지 잠시만 기다려 주시기 바랍니다. 예, 손 한번 다시 들어봐 주세요. 네.
예, 만나서 대단히 반갑습니다. 과거에 여행하면서 튼 책을 아주 재미있게 읽었습니다. 오늘 여쭤보고 싶은 것은 앞으로 한 번 더 그런 여행을 하실 계획이 있으신지, 또 하나는 과거에 여행하시면서 그런 경험이 실제로 여행 이상의 어떤 투자에 도움이 되셨는지, 그리고 마지막으로는 한국의 투자가들에게도 짐 로저 스타일의 세계 일주를 권장을 하시는지 여쭤보고 싶습니다.
Thank you. I'm glad you like the books. I certainly had fun on the trips and doing the books. I don't have any specific plans at the moment. I have these two little girls, and I'm waiting for the little girls to get older. It would not be very productive to take them now because they would not get much out of seeing the world since they're so young. But yes, I hope when they get older that my girls and I can travel and see the world. It's a great, great education for anyone. And yes, my travels helped me a lot. There's nothing like seeing the world close to the ground to see what's really going on. The first time I went to China in 1994, I was terrified. I had believed all the American propaganda throughout my life. When I got to China, I found out that the propaganda was not correct. I found out that there were astonishing opportunities in China. So that's when I started changing my mind and started to think about investing. On both of my trips around the world, I found many countries that where exciting things were happening, and so I started making investments. I never would have invested in those countries had I not been there and seen from the ground up what was actually happening in those countries. So travel has opened my eyes to many opportunities which I would have missed in other ways. Is it good for Koreans to go and do things that way? Well, I think it's good for everybody. The more we know about the world, the better off we are. First of all, the world would be a lot more peaceful if we weren't so afraid of other people. The world would be a lot more exciting and peaceful if we spent more time with other people instead of being scared of them because they have different skin, different languages, different food, different customs. We would all be better off. But you would also find many, many investment opportunities. Should Koreans do it? I think everybody should do it, but I want to say what I said before. Everybody should make their own investment decisions. Everybody should find their way to invest. Everybody should find their way to live their life. In the investment world, there are many people with many different approaches. I have friends who are very, very good short-term trader. I am horrible. I am terrible as a short-term trader. I am the worst in the world. That's not my way to invest. So everybody has to find their own way. For me, it was extremely useful to travel, to see the world from an investment point of view, because I found a lot of opportunities. Some of you are probably smarter than I am, and you don't need to travel to find the investment opportunities. But I do want to say there are many, many opportunities out there in the world. Everybody, whether you're American or German or Korean, should have some assets invested outside your own country as an insurance policy of nothing else. And I want to repeat, there are huge, wonderful opportunities in the world, especially here on this peninsula, as the north opens up, as the north changes. there are great opportunities out there in the world. So find them. Whether you do it by travel or do it by the internet, find your own way.
네, 성심성의껏 답변해 주신 짐 로저스 회장님께 다시 한번 큰 박수 부탁드립니다. 네, 이것으로 오전 기조 강연을 마치도록 하겠습니다. 오후 1시부터는 내년에 집 살까 아니면 그냥 전세로 살까라는 주제로 토크 배틀이 진행될 예정입니다. 나가실 때는 반드시 사용하신 통역 수신기를 자리에 놓고 퇴장해 주시기 바랍니다. 나가실 때는 꼭 통역 수신기 자리에 놓고 퇴장해 주시기 바랍니다. 장내 인원이 많습니다. 퇴장하실 때 가급적이면 천천히 퇴장해 주셨으면 좋겠습니다. 감사합니다.